wrote a piece today, Daniel. You can't forget about one thing you can't dismiss about Andrew Kavanaugh is that he's made his fortunes in business from health insurance. He's effectively gone through his entire life being risk adverse because that's the job. And he has to calculate what looks like an unnecessary risk, what looks like a decent bet. So yeah, it surprises me not in the slightest that he would want to get involved at this point. Perhaps just a little surprised that it's taken him this long to get personally involved in the process. But if he's got guys that he trusts to get to this point, then maybe it makes sense. But either way, I think it's reached the point now where it doesn't surprise me if he does appear, whether that's in Glasgow or somewhere in Europe over the next couple of days, because as we keep stressing, Rangers don't have a lot of time to mess around now. They've got to the point where they need to get something done. It's interesting. And I think all roads kind of point to Davide Ancelotti, because as we said last night on the show, before Don Carlo was unveiled to the Brazilian press in Rio, it was going to be fascinating to see who was part of his backroom team. Was Davide Ancelotti on the plane? Was he in South America? And we got the answer to that. No, he wasn't. And we got a little bit more than that when Carlo Ancelotti said that he's in talks with a European club. Some people are seeing that as an indication it's not Rangers, because why wouldn't he say a British club? I'm not personally buying that. The kind of PR machine around the Ancelotti family had Davide basically, signing a 3-year contract a couple of weeks ago at Rangers. They were that certain, and it was out there, and it was put out there for a very good reason, I'm sure. And the only other club that he was being linked at that time was Como in Italy. There haven't been any other links put out there by anybody's PR machine to suggest that anybody else has come to the table where Davide Ancelotti is concerned. So that would make you think and consider that it's Rangers. When his dad was talking about speaking to a club, it's Rangers. And then later on this afternoon, an Instagram post was put out, I think, by Davide Ancelotti's wife, which shows the family currently enjoying a sunshine break in a pool. One can only assume somewhere in Europe, given that he hasn't joined his dad's travelling party. And if, again, just fits in with the timeline, if people are waiting now on Andrew Kavanaugh to get this side of the pond, then it makes sense why the Ancelotti family are enjoying a day or a couple of days in a nice villa someplace just to relax. Because one of the things you would have thought is, well, if he wasn't joining his dad, why didn't he get in a plane? Why isn't he here already? And it might well be that the process isn't quite concluded and that he needs to wait for his moment in front of Andrew Kavanaugh. Certainly all seems to make sense, but we've been round the houses on this sort of process for a number of weeks now, and not a great deal of it has made sense, Daniel. We've disappeared down a couple of rabbit holes along the way, but it does feel now, surely, that we're on to the final stretch.
Well, that comment I've put up there, Keith, might shed some light on things. Apparently that photo, the Ancelotti family, is actually the time capsule in Coat Bridge. So that would
make sense.
That would make sense. So more as we get it on that.
Well, let's get somebody down to Guidi's in Coat Bridge, just in case that's where the big meeting, the big round table's taking place.
That would make sense. We'll get on that more as we get it. Look, a lot of people commenting, surely it'll be announced this week, it's dragging on. The one thing that I would say, just listening to you guys talk, Keith, is surely this must mean a formal takeover announcement is just round the corner if Andrew Kavanaugh is this involved in appointing the new manager.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not going to come as any surprise, or it certainly shouldn't come as any surprise to anybody who's been watching this show. Why it's taking so long, Daniel, God only knows. I think there has been a frustration with people inside the deal who are looking to sell shares, that it's taken quite as long as it has done, even though it was a very complex deal from the outset. I think there is a feeling that there's been an extra layer of caution applied, whether that's by lawyers, who knows. It has taken longer than was originally part of the schedule, that's for sure. And I think Dave King suggested it was going to be mid-June before it completes. I think that I'm not sure that I'm backing that. I think it'll be done sooner than that. And yes, again, all roads point to, you know, a new ownership structure being officially signed off and put in position, as well as a new manager. And, you know, Thelwell is still at Everton, isn't he? He's not really officially on the books yet. So all these things look as if they might fall into place at round about the same time. But it still leaves Rangers with so much work to do between now and the start of the new campaign.
We'll get plenty of comments coming in. If you want to get involved in the conversation, please hit us up in the comment section below. Before we move on, that's young people slang, you know what I mean?
About 20 years ago.
Whatever you say, Daddy-o. Right, some of the comments coming in. Let me throw these at you before we move on from Rangers.
Can't even watch the comments here.
Gaza B says, it's unreal. The simple fact Ancelotti has never been a manager or won anything hasn't been questioned a lot more in the media as a joke. Massive job. Wasted season again. Incoming. Marzuno says, big job for a 35-year-old with no experience. One slip up at a press conference in Scotland could have him permanently labelled a clown.
Well, I think it's what happens on the pitch that's more important than in the press conference. You know, and we have seen managers who struggle to deal with the intensity and the media side of it and the glare that's constantly placed upon them. And I agree with all of that. I agree with every word. I do think that ultimately it's what happens on the pitch that where managers will be judged. What I would say is I've written this column today, and I'm trying to be generous. I'm looking at this and going, there is the potential here for this to be regarded over the course of time as actually a stroke of genius if it is Ancelotti Jr. It's a complete divergence from what you would expect. It's out the box thinking. It's fresh. It's contemporary. I'm sure it's exciting for the Rangers supporters. Tick, tick, tick in all of these boxes. You've got a major name in Ancelotti, albeit it's not the Don, it's the son of. I'm sure he's got a contacts book, which will be very similar to that of his old man's. And he has had this privileged education and upbringing of being around one of the greatest managers that European football's ever seen. And it's not too much of a stretch. I certainly think the Rangers' position on this, if they did go down that road, it would be, you've got to hope, you've got to suspect that how is it possible to spend so much time around that sort of environment, those elite environments, and not pick it up, you know, not, you know, take a leaf out the old man's book, understand exactly how he did his man management, understand exactly the tactics that he employed. And if he's got all that, it does give him quite a good head start, doesn't it? And so you can see, I can see, I'm putting this forward as a reason why Rangers might think this is a good idea. I'm going to flip that as well and say, do you know what? As exciting, as fresh, as innovative, as visionary as this whole thing sounds, he's a 35-year-old man with no managerial experience. And that means if it goes wrong, then you're not going to be praised for coming up with something different. People are going to look at it and say, well, do you know, there was a very good reason why nobody else came up with that idea. It's not because you guys are geniuses. It's because it just wasn't a very good idea. Now, I'm sure with his background, Davide Ancelotti has to have a real chance of being a success as a manager. But you're throwing him into a bear pit, quite literally, by giving him that first shot in this environment, in this city. And that would be the concern. Because if it's not a stroke of genius, if it doesn't look as if you have just, you know, pulled one right out the hat, and this guy's a superstar, and Rangers are up and running right from the start of next season, which is going to be hard enough, by the way, given that they're so far behind the eight ball. But let's just say all these things fall into place. Yes, they will deserve enormous credit for having the foresight to go and make an appointment like this that nobody else would have made. If, however, it goes wrong, and if Brendan Rodgers is stretching out getting an early lead at the top of the top flight table, if he wins his first Old Firm game, all these examples of where it might go wrong. I think the pressure that comes down on Ancelotti will be ferocious, but also it will rebound on the guys that were involved in the interview process, without a question of a doubt. And that's what makes it such an enormous risk.